Does it still say on? Oh, here we go. All right. Okay, welcome everyone. I'd like to call today's meeting to order at 5:03 p.m. And then the first item, I guess, are there any public comments for closed session agenda items?
There are not.
Okay, and with that, we will convene to closed session at 5:03 p.m.
Great. See you on the other link.
All right, see you.
There we go. It looks like we're all back. So anytime you're ready, President Koo.
All right. Welcome everyone to our first board meeting of the school year. I am going to call the meeting back to order from closed session at 6:16. And first on the agenda is the flag salute.
Screen sharing has been disabled for me.
Screen sharing is disabled.
I'm sorry, just
We
one
can
second.
imagine. We can imagine the flag.
Welcome back to school, everyone.
All right, I pledge
There
allegiance.
you go, Sam.
You got it? Oh, okay.
Okay, coming up.
All of us getting back into the Zoom.
There we go.
Oh, wow, now it's animated even. Awesome. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. And I do have some, let's see, so tonight's meeting is going to be recorded, and I do have something to report out from closed session. The board voted to accept a confidential settlement proposal to resolve claims against the district instead of proceeding to litigation. The parties reached a compromise on specified reimbursements to be provided to the parents and children. And with that, we will now proceed to the Board of Trustees report. Vice President Sam Linebaugh.
Thank you, President Koo. It's great to see everyone back after a relaxing and enjoyable summer break. I hope you and your family stayed healthy and safe. And we're also able to enjoy a nice, relaxing summer break. Of course, as we get closer to the first day of school, I see activities popping up around the district. And I was able to attend a lunch with the administrators event at Ralston. A lot of kids came. They were happy to be on campus and see each other. And in addition, they were able to meet their new principal and assistant principal. And I was also happy to welcome them to the team. Regarding the pandemic, we all knew there was going to be ups and downs. At this time, things are not going as well as we hoped just a few short months ago. But I'm optimistic that eventually they're going to turn in a better direction. Of course, in the meantime, we all need to have patience and accept there's going to be some sacrifices for the better good of the community. I was encouraged, however, by Dr. Scott Morrow just the other day, and he said that we're in one of the most vaccinated areas on the planet. And the statistics for BRSSD zip codes show that we have some of the lowest infection rates in the country. And of course, that's or in the county, I'm sorry. And that's thanks, of course, to the community we live in that does a great job following health advice. Just thank you for everyone who's being vigilant and doing the safety measures. So basically, this means we're in like the safest of the safest parts of the world. So I think as long as we continue to stay vigilant with safety measures, I'm very optimistic about healthy schools and staying in person all year long. Back to you, President Koo.
Thank you, Trustee Linebaugh. And next, trustee Posse.
It's the start of a new school year, so I just want to welcome everyone back to board meetings and back to the school year, and I'll see the rest of my time over.
Thank you, trustee Posse. Next, trustee Howard.
Yeah, I want to echo some of the prior sentiments. It's just good to see everyone coming back to life and the schools getting rumbling back together. I was able to go to one of the events at Cipriani this summer, meet some of the family members as the kids eagerly demonstrated that they were excited to get back into school. And moms and dads too, eager to get their kids back into school. I was lucky enough to go to the Welcome Back or Welcome New Families event last night. And I want to thank everybody who was able to come and present there, and all the families that took out time to come to that event, and also apologize to the families that didn't quite hear in time that the event had gone virtual versus live. But we were able to record the event and make sure that it's going to be available to folks that missed it. And I know that our leaders in our district will make sure that they'll avail themselves to question and answer sessions before school gets started for especially our new families. And speaking of new people, I wanted to welcome all the new school leaders that we have just hired. Chuck Donovan over at Central, Sabrina up at Ralston, and we have 3 new APs, 2 at Ralston and 1 that is shared between Nesbitt and Sandpiper. So some really good people that have come into our district, and I think will make a big impression and bring big difference and bring a lot of good energy to their sites. So that's all I've got for now.
Trustee Howard and trustee Bopali.
Thank you, President Koo. I'm going to keep my comments short as well tonight, but I did want to acknowledge the hard work of the superintendent, our cabinet, our administrators, and of course, our teachers in getting ready for a really productive and exciting start to the school year on Wednesday. Can you believe it? I also enjoyed meeting our cabinet and administrators at the recent administrators retreat. We have quite a few new faces that Trustee Howard already mentioned, and having met them, I'm just really confident they're all going to meld together to form a really successful team. So welcome to all of our new leaders. I do want to focus on one issue which affects all of us, and that's traffic. As we transition back to in-person learning, while we're still dealing with a challenging pandemic, there are issues like traffic that are going to surface as they haven't in the past, specifically when there are more students who are taking our buses, our Samtrans buses. So you might know many of our neighboring school districts, including Sequoia Union High School District, have been operating for a few weeks. And the students and parents in those districts have worked out the new schedules. Having a 10th grader myself, I can really attest to the fact that traffic has become very challenging on Ralston Avenue. And as we have students specifically returning back to Ralston Middle School, just want to caution everyone to take a few minutes. Remember that kids are darting in and out of traffic. Everyone's sort of getting back to new routines, and give yourself a few extra more minutes just to get there, and so that everyone stays safe. As we're talking about being safe in the pandemic, just want to give that message of being safe on the roads as well. I think also as a district, one of the things we can do is we could partner with Sequoia, as we have in the past, not just to coordinate on school calendars, but also on school start times. We have always done that in the past, and I know that with the pandemic, that's been a little bit challenging, as for instance, Carlmont's going to a block schedule on some days. But I think that if we better partner with our neighboring school districts. That's going to be in the best interest of all of us. Most importantly, is students who lose a lot of valuable time in commuting. So I just would recommend that to our district leadership. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Papali. And I totally agree with you. Traffic has really increased ever since our neighboring school districts have gotten started. As everyone also mentioned, really excited for the school year to begin, and warm welcome to all the new staff. It was great to meet some of the new administrators at the administration retreat, and actually even people that have been with our district for a while, but we had only communicated via Zoom. And so it was the first time meeting them in person. And I finally realized how tall some people were because on Zoom. And I want to mention that, with the start of school, there's also a lot of big issues that are coming across school boards as it relates to safety and public access to our board meeting. So I had a chance to attend an APISMA, API School Board Members Association Back to School Mixer on August 9th. And it was good talking to other school board members about issues. So the top ones that we came up with that we broke up into breakout rooms to talk about was having safe public access to in-person board meetings. This one is still virtual. We're trying to set up the boardroom so that we can continue to stream the board meetings to the public. But at the same time, when the public is coming to the board meeting to make public comment, how can we do that safely and what are the protocols? And then also school safety and addressing the extreme opinions that different groups of people have. I think we're fortunate to be living in an area that is much more believing in science, but it was very interesting hearing from other parts of the state and kind of the issues that are cropping up. And then lastly, we talked about the social and emotional wellness of students and staff and how can we best address that at the start of the school year. I had a chance to attend the first school force board meeting on August 10th, and it was in person at the boardroom. So we haven't even met as a school board in the boardroom, but we've met as school force board in the boardroom. It was great to see everyone in person. It was actually a hybrid meeting. So some people were participating remotely and the majority of the people were in the room, and it worked out pretty well. We had introductions and talked about the education campaign. And I really want to thank the teams that worked over the summer to get ready for the launch of that campaign. And also thank our Director of Information Technology, Jerome Simon, for helping to get all of that integrated into Schoolmint. So that's really great. It was much recognition was had at the board meeting on getting that integration completed. And then lastly, I also had a chance to go to the new family orientation on August 18th. And because there were some people that showed up at Nesbitt, I think it behooves us to also take a look at our communication protocols for short notice changes, because I can imagine that things might be a little fluid as we monitor all the COVID-19 variants and figure out what's the best path forward in terms of large group settings. So, we can take a closer look at that and make sure that we're reaching out to people in all the different communication channels that we have access to. Fortunately, it's all recorded, so we'll make sure to get that information out to everyone. So thanks everyone for putting together some really well done presentations for the new family orientation. I think a lot of the information is actually helpful even for returning families, because we covered a lot on the logistics and the safety protocols, and I think everyone could benefit from that. And that's it for my Board of Trustees update. And next on the agenda item, Superintendent's report.
Great. Thank you, President Koo. Just so many great things happening. I will just say it feels really, really good to be getting back into the swing of things. I think for me, it started with our administrators retreat. I think that was last week-ish. Everything's starting to blend together already, but really we had our administrator retreat in person. It was a really great opportunity for us to connect, to plan forward. And really the focus of that administrator retreat was coming together in groups and in collaboration in an effort to support all of our students, our families coming through the pandemic. The idea of collective efficacy, that when we believe we can make a difference and we come together to do so, we're really capable of some great things. And that is going to be my message with all of our groups. I've said it a couple times. I'll share it with all of our district staff on Monday and our parent communities. But again, together is better. We've been saying that the entire pandemic here. And it really is the truth that when we come together, when we invest our time and our efforts for a cause, we're capable of some really great things. So we had the new staff orientation kickoff yesterday and it continued today. Just really nice meeting all of our new staff members, our new teachers. Big kudos to Assistant Superintendent Hu, Kristen, Director Goldman, who brought it all together and made sure that our new staff had the best opportunities in front of them and were involved the BRSSD way. So lots of work went into it from their team and from their support staff. We had some great PD happen this week at Sandpiper, Redwood Shores, and Nesbitt. Teachers came back in advance to do some site-based work. We had the opportunity of visiting and good things happening at each of those sites. And then Ralston kicked off with in-person orientations yesterday and today. Staff said it was just so nice to see the smile on our kiddos' faces and see them begin to connect and have a real middle school experience. I could keep going on and on. It's been really nice coming back and seeing folks, some people for the first time in person, and we look forward to continuing that. We've had a few events. We've transitioned a few events to the virtual space. We for our back to school nights, our new family orientation, while we'd love to see everybody in person, we are prioritizing in person with our students. That is our goal for the year. And even if it's mitigating a little bit of risk, we're willing to shift some of those events to the virtual space to ensure that we're able to move forward as we plan and in the most safest environment for our students and for our staff. And with that, I want to take a moment to acknowledge something that's coming up on the consent agenda tonight. We have the late retirement in June of two of our employees, Teresa Cardenas and Principal Chris Marchetti. Pam, just confirm, is Teresa able to join us tonight? Was she able to attend?
Teresa was not. Mr. Marchetti is here. I'm
Perfect.
going
So
to promote him.
great. While we're promoting Mr. Marchetti, I just want to recognize Teresa Cardenas, who was a paraeducator for BRSSD, as well as a custodian at Fox and Central Elementary School. She dedicated 9 years of service to BRSSD, and we are very grateful to Teresa Cardenas. Thank you, Teresa. Next, and I see he's promoted. I see his name, but if I can see him, that would be fantastic. There he is. Mr. Chris Marchetti, principal at Central. Good to see you, Chris. As you know, it's customary to honor our retirees with a resolution. This is resolution number one for a number one kind of guy for the 21-22 school year. And I'd just like to start by reading that. Whereas Chris Marchetti has announced his retirement from the Belmont-Redwood Shores School District, whereas Chris started out his career at Belmont-Redwood Shores as a 5th grade teacher at Fox School, where he was an instrumental part of ensuring students received opportunities to participate in both visual and performing arts. Whereas Chris carried out his duties as Dean of Students at Ralston with integrity, compassion, demonstrating a deep understanding of the needs of early adolescents. Whereas Chris returned to Fox as principal, and during his tenure, Fox received a California Distinguished School Award, acknowledging the exceptional education provided by the Fox faculty, characterized not only by high academic achievement, but also on educating the whole child. Whereas Chris became principal of Central School and consistently kept his focus on providing guidance and support in a calm, lighthearted manner to students, parents, and staff. Whereas Chris has the ability to get everything done with a great sense of humor. He always pushed leadership to think about the teacher perspective, put kids first in every decision, and was flexible and supportive. And be it further resolved that the Belmont-Redwood Shores School District Board of Trustees hereby commends Chris Marchetti with 33 years of dedicated service to the students, staff, and community of the district, and wishes him well-deserved, rewarding, and fulfilling retirement. Adopted by the governing board of the Belmont-Redwood Shores School District on this 19th day of August, 2021. Congratulations to you, Chris. I just want to take a moment to share a few words. I've only had the pleasure of knowing you for just a little bit over a year, and everything in that resolution is absolutely true. You lead with your heart, you lead with your feelings, you are always there for the kiddos, for the staff. We can always count on you, like you said, to have a sense of humor, to make us laugh, and do it kind of the Marchetti way, which we've all grown to love. So best wishes to you and your family. I know you have lots of things already planned. I wish you well. And I'd like to just open it up to any of our trustees before we open it up to you, Chris.
I'd be happy to share something, especially due to my relationship with Principal Marchetti. My daughter was a Central student, and I believe it was in 2nd grade when Principal Marchetti took the role at Central. I recall my first impression of Chris at back to school night. Now, if you've ever been in a meeting with Chris, he's always fitting jokes into his presentation. So all the parents loved him. He was entertaining and also educational. So first impression was great. After that, I later joined the PTA executive board at Central, and he was always so helpful to the PTA, supporting of the PTA, of parents, and especially of students. All the students loved him, even when they got the opportunity to throw a pie in his face for a good cause, but it was in a loving way, I guarantee it. I really enjoyed, being a parent and a PTA member at Central, and truly will miss Chris. And I wish you the best in your retirement, and it's well deserved. So best of luck in the future to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam.
Go ahead, Jim.
The first time I met Chris was when I was reaching out to him to get some assistance as PTA president at Nesbitt in terms of launching a makers type program and some of the kits that they had developed up at Central. And he was just so helpful and so just genuinely led me in the right direction. There was no difficulty in terms of contacting the right people. And it was just like the easiest interaction. And that was my impression of Chris in general. It's just, let me help you. How can I get you to the right direction? This is the right person to talk to. And it really made a big difference in smoothing out that process. And I'll always be thankful for Chris for that.
Great. And Chris, just again, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I want to thank you for the 33 years of dedication and service. Very much appreciated. If you'd like to say a couple words, you can.
So is it official now that you said that? It's official now. I did want to just say a couple things. It is, this whole process happened so fast because I was really going to be here another year, but just spending the time with my son and my family and doing that just sort of leapfrogged all the other things that I had to do. But I didn't really get a lump in my throat until when Linda Wilkinson was talking to me a couple weeks ago, and then just now. So I think, I try not to let it feel too real, but I am going to miss everybody. And listening to you talk, I realized that how much of a team it always was. And I know that people feel like they're working really hard, but when you step back and look, you can't do what you do without everybody. So as a board, I always felt very supported. Asking questions at anyone from the district office, I always felt like they were going to listen and help me. And the staff was great. I did want to say one thing. The distinguished school was central, and the teachers get the credit for that as far as I'm concerned. So I just wanted to make sure Fox staff was wonderful, but the central staff did a great job to get that award, a recognition a couple years ago. But it was always a team, and of course the kids is going to be the hardest thing to miss. And I've been on campus a little bit, and I've been helping Chuck, and I'm there if they need any help. I did buy a house already. Everything's moving so fast, so I'm moving up to Grass Valley at the end of the month. And my son started school, so life goes on. We had back to school night tonight. That's why I was late. And so things move on, but Belmont-Redwood Shores has been my career and my life. So if I'll be back to visit. I just want to say again to each of you, I appreciate all that you've done for me, and thanks for asking me to come and do this tonight, because I don't know, it's good to say goodbye. I felt like I didn't get a chance to do that to everybody. So that's it.
Thank you, Chris, and congratulations.
Yeah, you guys hang in there. I know it's a tough week. I'm looking at Chingpei. She looks like she has a ton of stuff going on. So I know all of you do. So just it puts a smile on my face to know that I'm, watching football and not worrying about any of that stuff. But the kids are lucky to have you, all of you. So and that's the truth. So thank you, and that's it. Thank you to all.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
And that concludes my superintendent update.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, it's been a long time for Chris Marchetti. Like he's been here forever. So he will be definitely missed. I always liked his updates in the PTA newsletters because I like to read them. So next agenda item is speakers wishing to address the board. If you wanted to address the board, you are supposed to submit a question or comment, or submit the question or comment by completing a Google form before the start of the board meeting at 5 p.m. So during the meeting, speakers will be called upon to make their comment, and ensure your full first and last name appears on your Zoom account so that we can identify and call upon you for a comment. If you are addressing the board on a non-agenda item, please be aware that the provisions of the Brown Act prohibit the board from acting or discussing such matters at this meeting. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person per topic. And Ms. Hopkins?
Yes,
Yeah.
we have one speaker, and that
Okay.
is Michelle Green.
Great.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. That put a little lump in my throat with Chris talking there. We both go back 33 years, and it's been a long time of knowing him. We're going to miss him. Tonight, I just wanted to briefly, greet everyone after the summer break and let you know that I'm, honored and pleased to be the new BRSFA president this year. And I've appreciated the opportunities I've had these past many weeks to connect with Dan and Rui and Ching-Pei and Julie and Laura Goldman on multiple occasions. As well as I've been able to really connect with our BRSFA executive board and members from our bargaining team. And those are two groups I have great respect for and excited to work with them this year. Now, as I look forward to the year ahead, even though we will have unique challenges again this year, just philosophically, I really value a professional and collaborative relationship with the district. And a goal through our negotiations this year for our successor agreement is really to work collaboratively, but to continue to bolster our teachers' salaries, good ranking of salaries in the county. I very much appreciate that the district has shown, how much they value us, and really, I hope that we can keep bolstering that standing in the county of our BRSSD salaries from cell 1 all the way, to people like me. It's very much appreciated, and I hope that we can work together to keep that good standing. California is one of the states in the nation that is, undergoing a teacher's shortage, and so I think that's strong. I also want to work collaboratively with the district during negotiations this year to really attempt to bolster our health and benefits as well, and other issues too, like a safety article in the contract and other things. For 33 years in the district, I have felt very proud and very fortunate to work in the Belmont-Redwood Shores School District. And through our collaboration together this year, I would love it if all of my colleagues really can feel a sense of that pride and in our school district, because I've had it my whole 33 years, and I want to keep it going in that way. And I would love for all teachers to be able to feel that way about their employer. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
And if I could, I just want to thank Michelle for her leadership and for stepping up in really difficult times through kind of post-pandemic. And what she shared, really, I'm just going to say, I know we typically don't resonate off public comment, but the idea of feeling a sense of pride, that is like super important. When I think about opening messages of collective efficacy, when we all feel a sense of pride, we're capable of so much more. So I really look forward to working with Michelle and the extended team as we move forward into the school year. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. Congratulations on your new role as president of BRSFA, and we look forward to collaboration. So next up is agenda item 10, approval of the agenda and consent agenda. Were there any updates or questions on the agenda or consent agenda?
There were no substantial changes. We will be correcting a couple of typos that were included, but we'll get those updated. Nothing substantial.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Hopkins, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. President Koo,
Aye.
Vice President Limbach,
Aye.
Trustee Posse,
Aye.
Trustee Howard,
Aye.
Trustee Bopali.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkins. And back to school update.
Yes. All right, Ms. Hopkins, if you can help out with the presentation, that would be great. And let me just adjust my screen here. Perfect. All right, well, I want to go ahead and just start by just really talking about the idea of back to school. This year, we are coming back as planned for a full return to in-person instruction. And we couldn't be more excited about that. I want to take a moment just to recognize that we all know that the Delta variant is out there, that it is circulating. And I think there's all a measured level of caution that we all have. And a little bit of nervousness. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that feeling, because I think that that feeling is normal. It's absolutely okay and expected. And just knowing that, again, working together to make sure that we have all of the protocols in place from the California Department of Public Health, from the San Mateo Public Health, from the San Mateo County Office framework, pandemic recovery framework. It's that science and those documents that we'll be putting into play to ensure that we have a safe environment for our students and for our staff. And we really remain committed to making sure that all those procedures and practices, in addition to a few others, are in play to make sure that we have a safe year ahead. Next slide, please. So a little bit about tonight. I'm going to talk about the 2021 guidance overview. The district did a COVID response plan, which is at that link. It's on our district website. And I really encourage folks to really take 15 to 20 minutes, read the I think it's 32-page document, because it does really go through all of the pieces and protocols that we'll be using. And I will be talking about a lot of them tonight, but really they go into in-depth detail within that document. So tonight I'll start up with talking about county health metrics. We'll talk about face coverings, quarantine requirements, and travel guidance from the CDC, instructional programs, and then I'll end with a little tidbit on AB 130, this independent study program. Next slide, please. So in terms of agency authority, we are working through many agencies, federal guidance from the CDC or Centers for Disease Control, state guidance, California Department of Public Health for general guidance, and Cal OSHA as it relates to employees. As a district, we are responsible for the education of our students, but we're also responsible for the safe workplace of all of our employees. And those things go hand in hand to encourage student success. And then finally, local guidance from San Mateo County Health. And at each level, there can be more strict guidance. That said, CDC, CDPH, and San Mateo Health are pretty aligned with all of their practices and protocols at this point in time, which always makes it a little bit easier for us in terms of navigating the environment. Next slide, please. Again, I mentioned just the primary guidance, Department of Public Health. I wanted to make sure that you had the link for that. That's as of August 2nd, 2021. The Pandemic Recovery Framework, the latest revision was August 9th, 2021. And as guidance changes, we will continue to update all of our local documents as well. Next slide. So the idea with the guidance that's come forward is based around the foundational principle that all students must have access to safe and full in-person instruction and as to the greatest extent possible instructional time. Last year under SB 98 distance learning, we had modified days. Students did not receive as much instruction and not as much in-person instruction as previous years. So really the goal of the guidance is to return to as much a normal environment as possible. And the health guidance at this point in time is allowing us to do so. So today I'm going to talk through those pieces. Let's start with a little bit of data. Next slide, please. So San Mateo County health data. The vaccination rate is that I pulled today, 12 and above is 91.2%. That's of the 17th. We have 89.2% have received both doses. And I pulled the RF factor, which is 1.07 today. And I think that's important to just take a moment to talk about, because we know that we have a variant circulating, yet the rate of transmission in our community is just over 1. And we know our goal is 1 or below. I think, as I've been talking with folks, really important that as we watch the news, as we watch the media, that we're critical consumers of what we hear. I feel like so much today when I turn on the TV, I'm hearing about, Delta variant spread, how it impacts many more people and is much more contagious. Yes. However, when I look at the data in our community, I see that the transmission rate between people is still fairly low. When I look at hear reports of quarantine in schools across the country, I always think to myself about what state is it coming from. California has very different masking requirements than Florida does. So as I see schools making news, I think about the protocols and practices that are in place. California has some of the strictest protocols and practices in place across the country. The other thing that I think about is vaccination rate. We live in a community that's 12 and older, 91.2% vaccinated. I'd venture to say it's even a little higher here in Belmont-Redwood Shores. But that is a high vaccination rate, and you don't see that in many of the other communities that we hear those reports. Again, not saying dismiss those reports, but just saying important to be critical consumers and really balance out what we know about each situation. Moving to the next slide, please. Again, you're going to see this, you're going to continue to see this slide in virtually every presentation that I provide. It's become fondly known as the Swiss cheese method, that things get through holes, but ultimately, if you pile enough pieces of Swiss cheese on top of each other, there's no holes for things to get through. So the idea of physical distance, hand hygiene, masks, vaccination, ventilation, quarantine procedures, vaccines, messaging, those are all really important pieces. Again, in terms of messaging, I want to send the message encouraging vaccination. If you have a 12-year-old or above that is eligible for a vaccination, science says that the vaccination is really the best way to combat COVID-19. So I encourage you to talk with your medical professionals if you have questions, but really to get vaccinated. That is how we are going to return to the best case of normal in the future. Next slide, please. So let's just take a moment and talk about what was different last year as opposed to this year. Just a little over a year ago, I was beginning as superintendent. We were at a stage where we were waiting for to hear whether or not California was going on the watch list. There was a surge of COVID-19. There was not many science-based protocols. We were trying to figure out, is it spread via surfaces? Is it spread via droplets? We didn't know. There was not robust vaccination available. We were hopeful for a vaccine soon, but that was just hoping that it was coming soon. We did not have testing and screening for staff or students, yet while not in BRSSD, not in our schools, there were schools across our country that did go back to school and did go back to school successfully, mitigating COVID. I kind of fast forward into the spring. We saw more science. We saw some science-based protocols that were clearly working in mitigating spread. We didn't quite have robust vaccination. This spring, we saw all of our educators starting to get vaccinated. And by the time we started, we had quite a few who had received both doses of the vaccine. We did have testing for staff, but we did not have testing for schools. And BRSSD schools did open with a hybrid model. And we had 2 cases of COVID. Both cases were not contracted while on school grounds. They were contracted outside. Both cases did not result in transmission or the closure of any of our cohorts. So we were successfully able to flex our COVID mitigation muscles and successfully provide support for our students and our families. So fast forward, we're now a year from where we were last year. The Delta variant is circulating. There's a spike in the Delta variant. However, our levels are still relatively kept at bay through mitigation practices. We have science-based protocols in place that are able to keep us safe, the Swiss cheese method. We have robust vaccination. Our county is, like I said, 92+% vaccinated. We have screening and testing requirements from the state of California for our staff. And we just partnered with a company that's going to be able to provide opt-in screening for our staff and our students on a weekly basis through pooled testing. We just worked through that and began to finalize that week. So it probably won't be available upon our first week of return, but shortly after we'll begin that pilot. We're in a time where all California schools are going back to in-person instruction. Next slide, please. Again, I'm going to quote Scott Morrow. He said earlier from San Mateo County Public Health, the cost to our kids by keeping them out of school and remote learning is immense and far outweighs any benefits. That said, I know there are some families that still are exercising caution and perhaps rightfully so for their particular needs and for their students. I think families need to move forward in a way that best meets their specific needs. But really holistically, when we talk about as a community, the benefits from returning to school definitely outweigh the risks. Next slide, please. So I just, I did a little research and looking at the American Academy of Pediatrics. They had an article on emotional and behavioral health. And they just really said that when we're coming back from the pandemic, that our children may express distress through internalizing symptoms such as withdrawal, fearfulness, anxiety, and external behaviors like irritability and aggression. So as educators, we're going to be on the lookout for those symptoms. That childhood emotional well-being is inextricably dependent on their parents' well-being. That means all of us adults are reacting to the pandemic in different ways. Our children see that and they react to that. So we play a role in how they're doing emotionally. Some of our children have experienced loss, grief, separation, not seeing their grandparents, not seeing their extended family, not seeing their close cousins and friends. And that stressors of the pandemic may increase the risk for suicide or its precursors. Really that is the ultimate worry that we all have in terms of mental health for our children. So in response to that, BRSSD has taken a look at our counseling programs. We used to have some contracted services. We believe that moving our contracted service to full-time equivalents here in district is really the best for our families and for our students. We will have 7 full-time equivalent counselors to support our district. Those are with partnerships with Sequoia Health District, as well as via School Force. So, it's via those partnerships that we're able to really add hefty supports, such as additional full-time counselors. So really important that we're taking a look at the emotional and behavioral health of all of our students. Next slide, please. So I'm going to transition into to really our ability to carry out in-person instruction. These are just visiting pictures from last year. They make my heart smile when I see our kiddos. Just the excitement one of our teachers is having with her kids as they're creatively making their way to class. Music outdoors with masks. That's still the way it's going to be here for a little bit until additional guidance comes out. But it's safe outdoors masked, and that's just what we're going to do. And then that center picture with a bunch of desks. It is our classrooms are large enough. We can distance. Social distancing to the greatest extent practicable is the recommendations. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to encourage distancing so that we're able to mitigate that additional mitigation level as to the greatest extent possible. Next slide. So face coverings. Face coverings have proven to be one of the top mitigation factors. And per CDPH guidance, face coverings will be required indoors in all BRSSD facilities, regardless of vaccination status. They're one of the most effective and simple safety mitigations to prevent transmission. They're one of the most effective measures for source control of both aerosols and droplets. Again, that's science says that's how it's transmitted, through aerosols and droplets, right? So having effective face coverings definitely mitigates that. California implemented face coverings early on. We've seen more states and agencies start to require that. But CDPH felt that with masking, that was such an effective mitigation strategy that it did provide us additional flexibility in other areas. And as such, they were the ones that moved forward in that direction early on. I get a question about what about masking outdoors? There is some flexibility for masking outdoors. We know our students do need masking breaks occasionally. That said, it is our practice and will be our guidance that masks stay on to the greatest extent practicable outside as well. When we're in line, it makes sense. When we're in the midst of physical activity, it may make sense to have a mask break, but generally speaking, masks will be encouraged outdoors for all students and for staff as well. Next slide. So the next few slides, I'm going to be really talking about how we work together as a community to make sure that we support one another, right? And it really is important that we all own our collective responsibility. If you are having symptoms, okay, please do not come to school. Do not send your children to school. For our employees in the audience, if you're sick, it's not easier to come to work than it is to stay home. Your kiddos will make do, and if your parents will help your children stay connected. But again, when students and staff come to school, they are acknowledging that they've answered no to the temperature screen, and we'll make sure that this is readily available for all. But if you have 2 of the multiple symptoms, chills, hoarse, sore throat, congestion, muscle pain, all those typical illness kinds of things, you need to stay home. That will be an excused absence. If you have a temperature of 100.4 or higher, you need to stay home. Those kinds of symptoms, really, it's incumbent upon all of us to support one another. Next slide, please. So I get this question quite a bit. What about quarantine? How is it changing? How is it shifting? This is the most basic flow chart that I've found. Ours in our pandemic recovery framework is a little bit different, and we're sticking with the counties. But this comes from school nurses. And really, quarantine flow chart is going to be based on two things. One, it's whether or not you're vaccinated or unvaccinated. And two, it's whether you're masked or unmasked. And I'll walk through a couple scenarios. I won't get into all the details, but I do want to give folks a flavor for what the protocols and flow chart feels like. So let's take an example. Elementary age kiddos are unvaccinated. So let's take an example as it would pertain to second grade. If there was a case in second grade and our contacts were masked, i.e., we weren't unmasked for extended periods of time indoors, we would look to whether or not the children are symptomatic or asymptomatic. If they're symptomatic, quarantine is in order, and that needs to happen immediately. If they're asymptomatic, we should continue to come to school unless they become symptomatic. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger because I want to make sure that I'm sharing the details. Remain symptomatic. They continue to appropriately mask, they undergo testing twice weekly, and they continue to quarantine from any other extracurricular activities. So if there is a case and they're asymptomatic, we will continue to be able to have in-person instruction take place with those contingencies. Again, they remain asymptomatic, they continue to appropriately mask, we undergo additional testing, and we discontinue extracurricular activities. Again, the focus is if we have a mask on, we are protecting ourselves. And I think that's pretty much what we've become used to as we go about our business during the summer. When we're out and about, when we're indoors, we're masking, and that is protecting us. If there's unmasked, there's a case and we can't determine that the contacts were unmasked, then you see quarantining in both cases, right? So it falls back to more traditional models of quarantine. So in the other case, where we can determine that we have vaccinated contacts with somebody that is positive, we go to symptomatic. If the contact is symptomatic, again, it's cut and dry. You're going to quarantine for 10 days and recommend testing. And if you're asymptomatic, you can refrain from testing or from quarantine. There is a recommended testing 3 to 5 days after exposure as a preventative. And we do have enough testing in place that will be able to support these testing requirements district-wide. I think I did mention pooled testing for students. We will be able to offer that as another preventative measure as we go throughout the course of the year. Next slide, please. So CDC travel guidance, this has been in play here since late spring. Again, it's our collective responsibility to follow the guidance. There's some specific guidance for unvaccinated domestic travel and international travel. There's the recommendation. Again, it is a recommendation. So we're going to ask families to work with us on this and do follow the processes as best as you can. There's recommendations for travel before, testing before and after, and self-quarantining monitoring symptoms. Next slide. Volunteers at site. The pandemic recovery framework does allow, recover framework, it should be recovery framework, does allow for volunteers, assuming that they are vaccinated. And we are going to hold to that vaccination status in our volunteer database. When you sign up to volunteer in our schools, we are going to ask for verification of vaccination status. We feel that that is the best way to keep our students safe. And we are going to put a hold on volunteers through August. We will revisit as September rolls around, and we're making sure that we're monitoring cases in the Delta variant. Again, our biggest priority is to get school started in person with all of our students and staff, and then we'll reevaluate volunteers as we go. But guidance does allow volunteers and extracurriculars. I already talked about this, instrumental music. I'm still waiting guidance, but they have these nifty masks as the student playing trombone. And the top picture is he's playing his trombone through his mask. We are going to provide masks and do music outdoors, serenading our neighbors and other classrooms with beautiful music. We've identified some places at each campus that they'll be able to do that. Next slide. Extracurriculars, the Art David League is prepared to move forward with returning to pre-pandemic level of support and participation. That's pretty exciting. We are working with our staff to get that up and running. We're scheduling times to meet with our administrative designees to get sports running. But again, testing options, masking will be in play and part of the program. The guidance says that where face coverings can be worn, they should be worn. When it's safe to wear face coverings while doing sports, we should do that, and we will. Next slide, thank you. School closures. Again, the level of the closure of a school will be made really through conversations with the Department of Public Health. We are required to report all cases of COVID, and we do so every time the minute we find out about them. And we work closely with San Mateo Public Health to contact trace, to identify any specific needs that we may have. We work through quarantine and scenarios with them. They will determine if schools or classrooms need to close, and we must follow public health guidance. So rest assured, we will be working closely with them as we're required to do. Last spring, we also posted on our district website all of the cases that were brought to our attention. We had, like I said, 2 cases that did not result in additional quarantine or cohort closures. We will continue to hold that notifying best practice for our community. We will post cases weekly on our district website. Please note that the tab's not active yet because we haven't started the school year yet. But the first Friday of school, we will be posting that on the 21-22 school year information. It'll be, I believe, in the side margin of the website, but definitely want to be transparent and open. In our COVID response, there are notifications that we will send out to families if we determine that there is a close contact that has those details. I want to be upfront and honest with folks. There is, due to medical requirements, there's only so much that we're able to share in terms of contacts and cases. We're not able to share who it was with. We're only able to notify based if we think that there's a close contact or not. But we will absolutely follow notification requirements. Last slide, please. I want to just take a moment to talk about independent study. Late June, actually, it might have even been into July, the legislature put forth AB 130. Assembly Bill 130 is still actually not finalized, but it requires all districts to provide an independent study program, which is specifically for families who feel that their children need a health accommodation. There's no definition of what a health accommodation is. It's based on the parents' belief. So we will work with all families that feel that they need independent study for their children. We've had informational sessions and put out that information already. Families that are under independent study may transition back to the regular program. We do not guarantee that they'll be in their originally slated class or at their originally slated school. We will put students back in in-person instruction where there's space available. I will say that we will make every attempt to keep school and classroom assignments consistent, but the independent study program is not really designed to go in and out of. It's really designed for a long-term experience. There is a transition opportunity to go back. That said, we encourage families to make a decision for the long term. The instruction is self-paced. There is a requirement for daily synchronous instruction, but it is not the daily synchronous instruction that we became used to under distance learning. There's an synchronous instruction block for TK3 daily between 30 minutes and an hour. For weekly synchronous instruction in grades 4 through 8, the requirement is weekly. That said, it will likely be more often than that. We anticipate a bit each day. And that is going to be through work with Edgenuity, which is an online platform, as well as California credentialed teachers. I point that out because distance learning, the question I get, why can't we just do distance learning again? Distance learning was authorized by SB 98, which expired in June of 2021. Legislature did not renew SB 98 and in an effort to ensure as much in-person learning for a full day as possible. And just want to make sure that we're clear about what those differences are. With that, I'm going to take some time for questions, comments, or any feedback that our board has. Trustee Bhopali?
Thank you for such a comprehensive presentation. Really, really appreciate going over all of the background and getting everyone up to speed. It's been a while, so it's a good refresher for everyone on the science as well as our policies. I had a couple of questions. The first ones deal with the independent study program. And I know that there was a questionnaire that was sent out to families, I believe, sometime last year about the intention or the request for independent study. And then I assume there were conversations that our Ed Services Department probably had with those families to determine if that was really the choice that they wanted to make, given all of the things you just talked about in the presentation about in-person learning being a far better option for most students than the independent study program. So that being said, Do you have a sense of how many students have requested, or a percentage of our students in the district that have requested independent study?
Yeah, we do. So last spring when we did the survey, if my memory serves me, I think we had between 40 and 50 folks share their thoughts about that need. I think we're at 30 or so families, 30 or so students. I think it was 24 families that were requesting that for a medical accommodation.
It's 31 students.
So that's really like less than 1%, I think, of our students.
Yes. Yes. And that's really why we needed to look at platforms such as Edgenuity, because really for our staff to provide dedicated support for students across multiple grade levels would be really difficult. At some grade levels, we have 2, 3, 4 students. We did our homework in terms of the independent study, and really feel that that's the best service for our students, with California credentialed teachers kind of overseeing, and local district support. We're going to make sure that all of our students on independent study are getting a full experience, getting the curricular content that they deserve and need, and that they're fulfilling the requirement of a full day of instruction. So we'll be monitoring that with BRSSD staff.
Terrific. Thank you. And then I have a couple of questions about the sports offerings with Art David League. I know you mentioned that the athletic directors will be kind of taking the lead on that, but I'm just wondering if you might be able to, if you know at this time, is the season going to be the same? In other words, sort of the fall sports like volleyball, et cetera, will be the same, and then moving into winter sports? Or are they changing that up? Because some of the sports are more high contact.
Yeah, I think all of our fall sports are permissible under low contact. I believe volleyball, track and field are the starts, and we're able to do that through the Art David League. I will say I am following up with our ADs very soon. They're officially not back to school yet, and we've been connecting a lot of dots, so we'll be scheduling that soon.
Okay, great. So I won't belabor it with more questions, but I would just say that maybe once you have those meetings, I'm assuming we'll be letting all of the community know with regard to guidelines about spectators, no spectators.
Absolutely.
Masking, all that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay, Trustee Linebaugh.
Yeah, Superintendent Gara, thank you very much for the full presentation of all the details on this. And I want to echo your original statement. We only had so much time. We could sit here for 3 hours if you want to go through the whole plan. But I did read through the response plan, and there's so much more information there that if you really want to know the details, you can find that. So, I encourage anyone listening to, if you still have questions, first of all, read that before asking other questions, because there's a lot of good information there. And that response plan, it's really a great document. Some of the questions I had that I didn't see in there though, were for the you showed the flow chart about what happens if someone's vaccinated, not vaccinated in the path. And so from what I'm seeing is that, it's on a contact by contact basis. It's not on a classroom basis, not a school basis. And it's only based on who's contacts, and has nothing to do with cohorts or classes, anything else. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
And then, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, really, the masking research the droplets and aerosols with the masking really does an effective job. So, keeping those masks on, except when we're eating, is really key to ensuring the mitigation and the transmission. So, and that was one of the reasons, honestly, why the state moved forward with masking, such strict masking guidance early on, before many other groups have gone to that. And I think, just generally speaking, when we look at California, I think California is moving more towards that preventative masking as a primary mitigation strategy. Yes. So each is a case by case. If there's a case, it doesn't necessarily mean the entire class needs to be or should be quarantined and not return to school. So again, we report every case to county health. Julie, Director Eastburn, talks at length and answers probably 1,000,001 questions about the specifics, and they really walk us through to ensure that we are appropriately providing the right guidance for our students, for our families, and tracking what comes next. So yes, it does not mean that an entire class would be quarantined.
And on your slide about the school closure, I really appreciate the fact that we're relying on that public health decision where they're going to look at a case by case. And, I don't even want to think about a whole school closing, but I'm glad that as a district, we are relying on the health experts to make that decision. So I applaud that direction.
Thank you.
And if, I'm always, it's great to plan for the worst and hope for the best in this case, but, if something should happen and a number of students or a teacher should happen to, we have cases, and then also we have symptomatic contacts, of course, they're going to be in quarantine. What does that look like at that point for the class? Like if half a class or maybe just a teacher and a few students, what happens in that case where a teacher's out or a number of students are out? Is there a distance learning plan, or the thing close down, or walk us through a couple scenarios there?
Yeah, we'll need to be responsive and we'll need to adapt. The likely, so, I don't want to be overly rosy. We will have to adapt to cases. I think in any community to say that there's going to be no transmission could be, a little bit naive. So we will do everything to mitigate, and we will be responsive as we need to, right? So we've proven that we can be flexible and adjust. Currently, there's really no guidance in terms of what distance learning would be required, right? So there's no SB 98. Rui and I were just talking about that in terms of capturing like attendance. There's, it's somewhat a little bit ambiguous right now, but we would support families if there was a single case in keeping up, especially if they were asymptomatic but positive. We are fortunate to have lots of technology in district, as our tech department has been working through. And if we needed to transition, we could transition, and we would do that.
And that transition could be to kids on Zoom, kids and teachers on Zoom.
It could be, right? If that was the need, we would make that happen.
Okay. Let's see. And then onto the independent study. I had a couple questions about that. Thanks for sharing the numbers of students. Fortunately, it's very small and hopefully very manageable and hopefully not a big cost to the district. But I'm curious what the cost is to the district for students, like per student. I know we get so much money per student for them. do we get any changing in funding for those students who go into independent learning is one question. Another question is what are the financial cost, how much additional cost beyond what we're already spending in both dollars and also in staff and teacher time to support that?
Yeah, good question. So in terms of per ADA, Rui, I'll have to jump in here. We're roughly per ADA over the course of a year is between eight and 9,000, Rui.
Yeah, the base is about $8,400 per student, and then students who qualify for supplemental funding, so your unduplicated students, is an additional 20% above that.
And so we have that base funding. The program itself runs about $3,000 per enrollment on top of staff, district level staff support and kind of oversight. That adds up, right? So when we're looking at about 30 or so students, that's roughly probably $100,000 or so. That said, when we look at staffing and balance of staff, to create combination classes, to shift teachers around, to make those adjustments would be really difficult on staff, right? So we feel that expense is appropriate given AB 130. It's our best opportunity and probably most comprehensive approach that we can provide for our students given the size of our district. The other option I'll just put out there, districts could work off of their own program like we're doing, or we could approve inter-district transfers to other districts that have the independent study program. In those cases, we would not receive any of the ADA. And at this point, we're actually staffed already based on those students. So that wouldn't help us either. Or we could work with the county office on a program. Unfortunately, that program's not available. The last resort would be to file for a waiver. And we're really, the belief is that we do have some students that are medically in need. And we want to support our students who are medically in need.
Thank you for those clarifications.
Yeah.
I have one question regarding the independent study. Are people changing their mind, or can they change their mind and move to in-person or vice versa?
Yes, AB 130 requires us to have flexibility and transition students from the independent study back to in-person instruction. We're required to do that. Certainly the logistical preference and the educational preference, I will say, is continuity. That we're financially responsible for slots that begin to get used. It's just our financial responsibility side. But in terms of continuity, we believe kids need continuity, and the online platform is going to be a different pacing. It's going to be a different delivery system. It's going to be different than the classroom environment. So, to the greatest extent possible that parents can make their decision and stick with their decision, I think that is in lots of best interests.
Can I just add to AB 130
Please.
Specifically calls out that this is for independent studies of greater than 15 days. This is not, I think I'm going to travel and CDC recommends that I stay home for 7 or 10 days afterwards. I want to switch to independent study. This is truly intended for families for whom either the child or the immediate family member has a medical need that necessitates a virtual setting and says that coming to school is not safe. as the superintendent was noting, the best way for us to serve and provide for our students is to teach them on campus in person.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I think I will just say, and I shared this with our provider as well. Fundamentally, education is, for the most part, a personal connection that we're building with each other, right? So kiddos in classrooms working with their classmates and their teachers. I strongly believe that that's a strong educational model that we strive for, right? That said, there are always families who have specific preferences, and I respect families' right to those preferences. So we'll do what we need to do and support all of our families. But really, the heart of our instruction does happen in person in our schools in the district.
Yeah, Trustee Howard.
So I guess I have mostly comments and mostly just wanted to highlight some of the things that have been presented so far so that they don't get missed. The unique position I have as a physician for children in a children's hospital gives me a little bit of insight into how things are really rolling out with the Delta variant. And I would say that the most common thing that we're seeing, at least anecdotally, is that either an entire unvaccinated family is ending up in the hospital, or the unvaccinated family member then spreads the virus to vaccinated family members because of close contacts and unmasking in their home environment. We're really fortunate. It's not just a little bit fortunate, but really fortunate that our vaccination rates are so high in this area. It is really keeping our R0 or R effective down. We're seeing the R effective reported for the entire county, which, technically means that the above being one is that the infection is on the rise or spread is on the rise in our county, but that doesn't mean that that's the entire county, because our unvaccinated rates are really highest in pockets. And so there are going to be some communities that are harder hit by this surge of the Delta variant than others. And although it's good to see that we are well vaccinated in this region, there's still going to be some overflow, and we're just not going to be able to help that. But the mitigation measures that we have in place should really put the dampers on it, especially our vaccines. The one question I had for you, Dan, or one of the questions I have for you, is that it's good to know or have a sense, if you're the public, what percentage of our staff, all employees, all incomers are vaccinated, and how are we going to be applying the screening that is there as a public order, which bears the weight of rule of law in terms of screening our unvaccinated employees, which is a requirement for them to continue to be employed.
Yeah, some feedback there. Sorry about that. So we are collecting vaccination status of all of our employees. We did a kind of a soft launch of that in the spring before it was required. And we had a number of our employees submit their verification. So we're asking our employees, what vaccine did you have? On what dates did you receive the vaccine? And asking them also to upload a copy of their identification card that's redacted. So we want to make sure that all of our employees are vaccinated. And if they're unvaccinated, making sure that we're doing the appropriate testing protocols for them. Everybody officially starts back tomorrow and Monday. So we've been updating. We still are reaching out to some of our employees, but roughly now we have approximately, don't quote me here, right around 95% of our employees have been vaccinated, those who have submitted. Employees have an opportunity to share that they've been vaccinated, they have not been vaccinated, or they decline to state. If they decline to state, we treat them as an unvaccinated employee and will require testing.
And Dan, how often are you going to require testing for our unvaccinated employees?
So our unvaccinated employees, we're following the state mandate, which is every week. With the pooled testing, there's opportunities for an additional testing each week as well. So up to 2 times per week.
Okay. I also wanted to highlight one of the comments you made about the importance of returning children to classrooms. While we do see some children that come to the hospital and need medical treatment, the major health crisis that we've seen in children during the pandemic is there's the stress on mental health. And it's one of those things that's very difficult to measure. One of the measures that we have out there is the number of ED visits or emergency department visits that have happened over the last year as compared to prior years. And what we see is that, especially in adolescents, the 12 to 17-year-old group, ED visits are up significantly for both anxiety and self-harm. And this is kids that are in our district. So that age range is especially at high risk, but we know that that has been a stress on families from top to bottom, whether they have adolescents in the family, whether there are parents that are home that are under stress, that stress at home then translates down to the younger children. So there's a lot of interdependence there. And one of the reasons I wanted to highlight that is I'm especially proud that we've invested in counselors this year in making sure that our children have access to mental health resources when and if they need it. And in particular, the focus on knowing or having an awareness that the transition back to school may be a little bit stressful in and of itself. And so that positive behavioral intervention focus, the availability of counselors, I think has been one of the pieces of wisdom that have come through our district this year that I'm quite proud of. So thank you for that. One of the things that we're also very proud of in this district is our focus on not only extracurriculars like sports, but things like art. And so our art and action docents are typically volunteers. How will we be handling that program? Will we require those to be vaccinated volunteers? Will they be able to be on campus? Or will they have to do that from on a distance learning type format where they're broadcasting into the classroom?
We are able to have volunteers in our classrooms. We are going to require vaccination. The guidance actually says that virtually anybody who's on campus needs to follow the same protocols as our staff. So we will be requiring vaccination for those volunteers. We will support the community and that endeavor to the greatest extent possible. We are holding off initially. We want to make sure school gets going, but we do anticipate that we will be able to have some volunteers for those programs.
Okay. And then one of the other things I wanted to highlight that probably got missed because it's in the consent agenda is something that Ms. Eastburn promoted was the increase of our sub-salaries this last year or going into this year, because we expect that there are going to that are going to be out that will have, as we've said, if you're feeling sick, don't come to work. And that means there's going to be an increased stress on our sub burden. And we've moved to increase the salaries of our substitutes, so both short-term and long-term, so that they're much more competitive within the county, especially with our near neighbors. And thank you, Julie, for that wisdom. I think that was really smart. I also wanted to acknowledge something that Michelle Green said about the making sure that there was a safety clause within any kind of new contracting that we're working on with our unions. Again, the focus on making sure that we're doing the right thing for both our staff and our kids is huge, and putting that as a priority in their negotiating with the district, I think is just acknowledges that we're all in this together and that we have to take care of each other. I also want to share some good news. The things that we've heard in terms of vaccines being such a huge part of this whole response to the coronavirus and the Delta variant, et cetera, is that what has been rumored, and I have no reason to doubt that rumor, but around Labor Day, presumably before Labor Day, the formal FDA approval for the groups that have already received the EUA, emergency use authorization for some of the vaccines, should start rolling out. And so that will change our math a little bit in terms of how we talk with our employees about vaccination status. And don't be surprised if there's a conversation within the California legislature around vaccine requirements and what's going to be required or not once formal FDA approval has occurred. And then the other piece of information that's quite germane and timely is that there are, in the last couple of days, starting last night, I believe there are reports now that Pfizer is getting ready to submit their data for EUA on the 5 to 11-year-old group. So the scuttlebutt is sometime late-ish September. So hopefully that means if the late September submission happens and the same math happens in terms of how quickly the FDA is able to sort through that data and come up with an emergency use authorization, the timing for the adult data was about 3 weeks. So if we're talking September, end of September, then we're talking maybe at best case scenario, mid-ish October. And now our school age kids are then open to receiving the Pfizer vaccine. So there's a lot of things happening that may not be as obvious unless you are paying attention to the signals that are coming through. But I think we're in a really good place to line up both, put our families in a position to win so that they can both receive the vaccine and the mitigation measures are in place until that vaccination effort is rolled out. So that's all good news. And so the follow-up question is, Dan, when those vaccines become available, will we put some effort into helping our families, children who are interested in receiving the vaccine, get that vaccine within our school sites?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we as soon as we got notification that the 12-year-old one was available, we had it already set up. I think we had our first clinic the Wednesday after the first Friday. I think it was available, something like that. So we're already connected with those partners, and we will pursue that to the greatest extent possible. I think it's a win-win for us all. Jim, if I can add one other thing in terms of mental health, I've written about it a couple times in my updates, but I do want to mention that the district has a partnership with Care Solace. And if I can just summarize what Care Solace is, it's really, they bill themselves as kind of a concierge service. So if I need help with whatever, let's just say depression, I can call up confidentially Care Solace and share my insurance information with them, or lack of insurance with them. And they will connect me with providers that fit my needs and my ability to go insure or pay. So it's really kind of that wraparound service that they provide, and they take the work out of it. They'll actually make the contact for you, and then they call it a warm handoff, connect you with the provider. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it, takes a lot of the anxiety and the stress out of it. So again, Care Solace, if you have any of those needs, please reach out to them as well. Just another option for our community.
Thank you, Dan.
Trustee Linebaugh?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment directed towards Trustee Howard. Just wanted to thank you for bringing your medical perspective into the meeting here. All this information is really super valuable. So thanks, Jim.
Yeah, I want to echo those things because not every school board has a insider view on everything that's happening from the health perspective for our kids. So, thank you for all of that information. Any other comments or feedback? No? Okay, great. Well, thank you, Superintendent DeGuara, for a very informative update. And I am very excited to get the school year started. I think we're in good shape.
Most definitely.
Yep. The next agenda item is BPAR 6158 independent study, first reading and approval.
And that is before you tonight. So we've been talking about Assembly Bill 130. With that, that pushed a lot of updates to board policies. AB 1, the board policy and is reflecting of the AB 130 changes. And it's recommended for first read and approval tonight.
Is there any feedback or can we move to a motion?
I had a question, if I could.
Oh, Trustee Linebaugh, yeah.
Thank you. I was reading the policy and it talks about attendance, and they use this term time values of student work products to help define attendance. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that and how you interpret that to quantify the attendance of students in independent study.
Yeah, so independent study, because it's independent, you're not, you can't quantify from the start of the day to the end of the day. So educators are responsible for providing an amount of work that would satisfy a typical amount of time in the school day. So I give a math assignment. I would anticipate that my students are working on it for 45 minutes. That contributes to that time and that length of day. So it is based on educators' belief and what satisfies that. Kids work at different paces, but on the Edgenuity platform, we do track time and the amount of time that kids are engaged with the system as well.
I move for approval of BPAR 6158 independent study, first reading and approval.
Second.
Second.
Ms. Hopkins, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. President Koo,
Aye.
Vice President Linebaugh,
Aye.
Trustee Howard.
Aye.
Trustee Posse
Aye.
and Trustee Bopali.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkins. And item 13 is our educational services update.
Ms. Hopkins, are you presenting or do you need me to?
I can do it. Just 1 second.
Oh, you know what? I know I normally do it myself. Hold on.
I have it ready if you want.
Actually, that would be great because I have so many tabs open right now. I'm not sure I could find it. Thank you so much. Okay, we're gonna be pretty short and sweet tonight, I think. We have a pretty quick update. If you'll just go to the second slide. I've got mine up here with me. So we're going to talk very briefly about 3 basic points. I'm going to give you a summary of our summer school program that we ran for the first time this year. I'm going to give you a quick glimpse of our student achievement as of end of year as we plan to move forward, and then talk a little bit about our new staff orientation. And I think there might be a slide in there about admin retreat as well. So this summer we ran our inaugural general ed summer school program. It was actually really fun to see kids on campus, interacting with their teachers. We were able to provide instructional services to 137 students, K-7. We had sent out invitations to close to 350 students. So it's about 40% participation rate. We had staffed ready for that many students. So as you can imagine, our groups ended up being very small, which had maybe an unintended positive consequence of a lot of individual time with the teacher, a lot of individualized attention to really focus in on projects. It also ended up being serendipitous. We did have one of our staff members that we hired resign after a week due to a conflict with a full-time job they received. And so thankfully, because we were low enrolled, our existing staff was able to take on the load of the students and still be within still maintain a rather small teacher to student to teacher ratio. We did have 34 students in band who opted to participate. We had invited every single student who was enrolled in band in fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh grade and eighth grade, so that they could come. And Superintendent DeGuara posted some photos from summer school where the students, you could see them with their specialty masks. And then we invited every student who was enrolled in Spanish over the course of the 2021 school year. And we had 23 students opt to participate in our Spanish program. So fairly small, spread across 2 campuses. In addition to that, we had our intensive reading program that served another 55 students. And then we also had our standard ESY, which had another couple hundred students. So even though each of these little programs felt small, the Redwood Shores campus was bustling from June 14th to July 9th. And it was great to see staff, teachers, paras, office staff, students, families interacting, coming and going, and continuing to practice the safe protocol. It was, generally speaking, a very successful experience. We do plan to run summer school again in the next summer. Some strong learnings. We had piloted an assessment for students to try and see in the short 4 weeks. It's a little bit difficult to do a pre-Fountas Pinnell and a post-Fountas Pinnell, as teachers usually spend, they're over 4 hours a day. It's a lot to say, take out that time and do assessments. Because by the time you finish your first round of assessments, it would be time to start the second round. And we really wanted them to focus on the instruction. We did do a pilot with an assessment from Stanford and found that it was rather difficult to give. So they are still analyzing the data. It was a partnership with them. So I haven't even seen that yet. We looked at reading SRI, scholastic reading data for our students in 3 through 8. And it's another tricky one where you think about the validity and reliability of the assessments. It is not intended to be given in such short sling. So students didn't lose any ground between their last administration in school and then the end of summer school, but they also maybe didn't show significant growth. I'm not so worried that that means they didn't learn at summer school. I think more it's about trying to find a better assessment metric to really monitor the growth and the progress. The kids were having fun and they were really excited to be there, and that's always nice to see. Next slide, please. We've been talking a bit about student achievement. We do have preliminary data from the end of the school year looking at our local benchmarks as well as looking at our state data. So I put together a snapshot for you. I've given you the comparison from 2 years ago so that you can see compared to a so-called normal year. You'll remember that in 1920, thanks to COVID, we suspended all assessments at the end of the year. So we don't know where our students ended. Both local benchmarks and state assessments were effectively canceled. So in 1819, 79% of our total population of tested kids, so grades 3 through 8, 79% of them met or exceeded state standards. In this last iteration this spring, we had 75% of our students meet or exceed standards. It is slightly lower. I mean, it's a basic math problem, but I think given the year that we had, given the in and out of school, given the transition, given the challenges our students and our teachers had to face last year, this number to me is not statistically relevant in terms of a slide. Same thing in the English language arts. You'll see that in 1819, 82% of our students met or exceeded state standards. And this past year, 80% met or exceeded state standards. That's virtually the same thing. In Fountas and Pinnell, interestingly, you'll see that 70% of the students met or exceeded state standard, not state standards, end of year grade level benchmarks in 1819 compared to the 83% who met or exceeded the grade level standards in Fountas and Pinnell. And that's our local reading measure at the end of this year. And, you know, I haven't dug too deep into this, but I would be willing to bet that anecdotally speaking, our teachers thought that giving the assessment via Zoom was actually a positive. They could focus on the child and do the assessment and not worry about what the other 24, 29 students in the classroom were doing and ensuring the other kids were staying focused and on task. Perhaps that is part of why we have such good data for our reading. And then our writing benchmark is one that the score is always lower. This is something where teachers are hard scorers. As we get better and better at using our rubrics and instructing to ensure that our kids are meeting the high rigorous standards of the program. I think these numbers will change a little bit. In 1819, 52% met or exceeded the end of year standards expectations for writing, and this year 49%. So again, everything's plus or minus 5%. Really plus or minus 2 to 3 with the exception of math. So I think we're headed in the right trajectory. We will do beginning of the year assessments as well to see, we generally have a little bit of summer slide. We are finalizing our selection for what we are going to do for academic screeners. We know, 20% of our students are likely going to not meet the fall standards, given this is where they left at the end of the year. So we are following that up this year with something new. We are going to be implementing some additional automated assessments to try and figure out what that gap is through academic screeners. Our teachers know when their kids are behind, but we don't necessarily know in what component of reading or just how far behind or what are the skills that are lacking in math. And so my team and I are still trying to determine that final option for what we do, because ultimately we want to make sure it's something that's easy for the teachers to give, that provides valid and reliable data and gives us actionable information that doesn't make the kids feel like yet another test. I mean, we need to know where they are, but we don't want to test them to death. Next slide, please. Today, we wrapped up our new staff orientation and I completely spaced because I was having so much fun with them. I didn't take any pictures. We have a great new group. At the time of publication, there were 18 new hires. As of today, there are 20 new certificated hires who have joined us. We had 19 of them in attendance. We focus on a whole bunch of different things. Really, we welcome them and train them on, as the superintendent was saying earlier, the BRSSD way. We really talk to them about what it looks like to implement a multi-tiered system of support. What does that look like in terms of my responsibility in the classroom, but also my level of supports from my colleagues. We are indeed better together. So leaning on one another really helps improve our multi-tiered system. We talked about positive behaviors, interventions, and supports, PBIS. We are a PBIS district. While all of our sites will very likely be revamping some of the PBIS this year, given that we're coming off of a very strange year and we'll need to teach new behaviors, such as what does safety look like when you're out in the field? How does wearing a mask look? We'll have to teach kids explicitly. And I think most of our kids who are here in hybrid already are very familiar, but masks need to cover your nose and your chin. Masks need to be fitted so that air doesn't come in and out. Masks can't have valves. Masks need to have ear loops and not bandanas or gaiters. Those are the things that will be added, I'm sure, to our PBIS lessons. We had a wonderful presentation about math workshop from a vendor in Denver. They had presented to our elementary staff this past spring in February and in April. And so we were able to bring the vendor back to talk math workshop again with the new hires so that everyone's on the same page. And again, we also had Nearpod present and show our new hires some of the tools that we picked up last year. We're excited to be able to use funds from our Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant to continue some of the good technology so that we can continue to improve upon our instructional tech, using tech not just for tech's sake, but really improving our efficiency in instruction and increasing student engagement. Our site leaders met with them all today. We had a nice lunch. And I want to say a big thank you to BRSFA, who hosted lunch for the new hires yesterday, along with introducing themselves and walking them through the process. All in all, every year I always feel excited after seeing them because, it's your new batch. It's the beginning of the year. But I have to say we had a really solid group, and it was particularly exciting to have 5 brand new counselors in the group. You can get a sense of people in a very short amount of time. And I think they're going to be a fabulous team, really connecting well and really thinking about our kids and making great connections with their colleagues in the room already. So thank you to all of the various funding sources between School Force and Sequoia Healthcare District. These new hires are awesome. Next slide. We did do our administrators retreat, as the superintendent noted earlier. We did this last week at Seaport Conference Center. We focused on building relationships, because if we don't, as a leadership team, have solid relationships and a good sense of collaboration, it won't trickle down and it won't be mirrored at our sites. And we want to make sure we work well together and support one another. Again, continuing the theme of better together. We also looked at our futures protocol. You've done that with the superintendent before, and it was really nice to hear from the team. I think we do have a number of new administrators, but I would say this team of principals is probably the most aligned I've heard from, seen in my now 5th year here in this district. So it's really exciting to have this great new group continuing to move us forward. And we really did continued to focus on our equity work. A few of you were able to join us and caught the tail end of our discussions as we looked at our equity statement and thought about what does that mean in our daily work? How does that play out as we support teachers and students and families? So it was really just a good time to reset, recharge, and be ready for the new year. I think everyone's super excited just to see students on campus. And then that's it for me. I will leave the next slide just as questions. Yep. Any questions?
Yes, Ms. Hopkins, do you mind going back to that slide with the percentage that's on it? I just want to make sure I read this right. Because these numbers look as if a pandemic never happened to me. I just want to confirm, now, did they take these tests and they adjust and say, oh, we had a pandemic, we better give it easy on them or something?
There was no adjustment. In fact, we were all quite nervous because the students who were in person took the test in person. The students who were in distance did this remotely. And I mean, just the level of difficulty to ensure that the test was running properly and the tech glitches that our teachers experienced giving the test. I mean, they were giving the test with these tiny little icons of the students. They could not be on Zoom with them. They had to use a secure testing browser. It was a challenge. And these numbers are incredibly impressive to me. They are the overall district numbers, right? So there are going to be pockets. Each principal will review that information with their school sites where it's not quite as rosy as a picture, but on the whole, this is our district. To compare apples to apples, this is what we look at here at the board level regularly. And We will have students that we need to help support. We always do, but really, like you said, it's almost like a pandemic didn't happen. Our kids did amazingly well.
So
They
would you, so based on that, would you consider this, all the talk about learning loss is a myth?
I don't think learning loss is necessarily a myth. I think certain populations were hit harder than others. And when you disaggregate the data, we'll see who was hit who was more affected, who was more adversely affected. It's a bit predictable, but I think on the whole, we have a fairly affluent, connected, well-resourced community with really dedicated, hardworking teachers who reached out and got in touch with kids and made a difference in kids' lives. So I think there are going to be students who did not thrive. I mean, we know that across the board anecdotally, and we'll be able to look very specifically class by class. But I think the important thing to recognize is it's not because a teacher or a school didn't do as good of a job. It really truly is the circumstances surrounding. So what we have to think about is what are the wraparound services we'll provide for the populations that maybe didn't do as well.
Well, I do want to applaud all the teachers and staff in the district. I mean, those numbers coming in so close to where they were 2 years ago. I wouldn't have expected that based on what we've been through over the past year. So hats off to everyone who's done a fantastic job.
Our teachers really, I mean, if I could smile properly right now, I would, but our teachers really hit it out of the ballpark. There's no better metaphor. Trustee Howard?
Yeah, I think that the other group to acknowledge is the parents, because it's hard to imagine those kind of numbers without the Herculean effort that not only our teachers did, but our parents did, helping their children learn this last year. And I mean, just the contrast in stress in the home and effort put into teaching your own child when you couldn't quite get them to focus on the lesson that was there in front of them between last year and this year is just going to be, I mean, so dramatic.
So
like I can actually walk in the neighborhood with my dog instead of like watching the kids all day.
I received a text message from someone saying, both of my children are in school and today I didn't know what to do with myself. I mean, I am excited to bring our children back. I think you're absolutely right. Our community, parents, caregivers, nannies have had all stepped up and supported at home, from reteaching, teaching to just ensuring that the child's sitting there watching the screen and not, multitasking like mine did, looking like they're there, but then playing Minecraft on the side.
Ms. Hu, will we also get a sense of what content tested less well? Because you can imagine like the earlier content would, like in my mind, I see, and this may or may not be true, right? But the earlier content we might have nailed, and then as we went through the year, perhaps because of pacing challenges, may not be as strong as some of the earlier.
I think we'll get that information from our local assessments. The state test does not break down in the same way. Back in the days of CST, you would be able to map standard by standard by standard where kids did really well or didn't do quite as well. Now they break it up into claim areas and it's not individual discrete standards. So you will get a sense, but you get a far less granular reporting because there aren't as many questions. So they don't feel like it's as reliable. Instead of getting 4 levels, you get 3 of not there, meeting, exceeding, but you're kind of that big clump. Most people end up in the 2, which doesn't give you the detail of where are our kids actually, where did they fail, where did they succeed. We will be able to get that from our local metrics, which is also why we are looking, we're just trying to finalize what assessment we use for our local screeners to see where exactly are the gaps and how can we differentiate the response for individual students who need more.
The aggregated data was K through 8. So will we get some sense of which grades did better and which grades struggled a little bit more?
I'll send that to you in a weekly update. Yeah. Any other questions?
I just had a question about in terms of the new administrators and staff, what are the programs and supports that are in place to get them up to speed through the year?
Yeah, so we always, for administrators, I meet with them once a month in our principals PLC, and it's directed professional development. We also meet once a month as the whole cabinet team with our principal. So they're getting 2 monthly meetings with us. I have bi-weekly meetings set up right now with Chuck and Sabrina to meet one-on-one with them at their school sites every other week. So basically I'll see them every week between our full cabinet meeting, my one-on-one with them, and then our PLC meetings. And then I also host regular meetings with our assistant principals. Our assistant principals primarily get their professional development and leadership from their daily interactions with their principals, but I meet with them monthly. Last year we met bi-monthly because it was a newer group as well, and they felt like they needed more. We'll go that, I mean, that's a little bit touch and go. Even though they're new to our district, I feel like we have a solid bunch. I think once a month will be sufficient. So that's kind of the informal support structures that we have in place. All of our leadership team will be participating in a training by WestEd this year called Learning to Lead Through Change. So then there's formal professional development over the course of the fall to help them. And then for new staff, there's for certificated staff, there's the orientation we provide today. Brand new staff who are working to clear their credentials also participate in induction. And so they get a mentor coach from the County Office of Ed who walks them through everything. Our sites have informal teacher leaders who then also take people under the wing. And we have several drop-in PDs that are being hosted through various departments, mental health therapists, our specialists with Laura, my counselors are all hosting kind of office hours. So as teachers, new or experienced, need support or need some a thought partner, there are formalized times to come and seek for help. In addition to all of the informal stuff, nobody who works at a school district really can close the door and say, leave me alone, because your neighbors knock on the door and talk to you, your grade level peers, your school peers, not only become your colleagues, but become your friends.
I'm glad to see that there aren't any staffing issues in our district. So that leads me to believe we are a very desirable district because you outside of all the teacher shortages. So that's really good to hear, and the great support that the new staff get. And then one additional question I had was, given only 40% of the students that we invited to the program attended, is there going to be any special focus on those students as we start out the year?
I think it's maybe a little more of the same and a little bit more detailed than before. We always assess all of our students. Our teachers always pay attention to those who are not at grade level, pay extra attention and create extra strategy groups within the classroom. The layer that we're adding this year that is new and different, and I think new and improved, is the screeners that will help us utilize technology to our benefit to find the exact gaps so that we can be more precise in the interventions that we apply. I think the biggest frustration we hear year after year from staff is, we know the child's behind, we know we've tried things, but we're still not seeing growth, and we don't really know why. And it's because we don't really know where the gaps are. And so helping to develop that expertise, helping to provide resources to identify through the use of technology tools, I think is going to be a nice way to support teachers and students. And really, we're hopeful that the data continue to hold strong, that the vast majority of our kids are going to be right where we expect them to be at the beginning of the year. And if not, we will continue to differentiate and scaffold and support them.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, Assistant Superintendent Hu. I know it's been a very busy summer trying to prepare to go smoothly at the start of the year and managing all the summer programs as well. So thank you for all your hard work.
Happy to do it.
Yeah. And actually at this point, it's 8:23. Let's take a quick break and we'll resume at 8:30. Sound good? Okay. All right. See you in a bit. Looks like everyone is back. So let's resume our meeting at 8:31 p.m. And we are now up to CSBA Board Policy Updates, June 2021.
Great. Before you this evening is our routine policy update. The list there shows which policies CSBA was recommending an update to. Some of the policies we don't currently have in our policy book and are crossed out. One note, there's board policy 5142.2 and AR 5142.2 that are crossed out, that's crossed out the Safe Routes to School program. We have that policy and we did include that policy in the reading. So it's just a typo error on the overview there. These policies are submitted for first review tonight. There's no action needed. We'll be asking for a final approval at our next meeting. We're happy to answer any questions.
Trustee Linebaugh?
Just one quick comment. Yeah, I read the civility policy and couldn't resist commenting on that. How important it is to encourage our student, staff, and community, of course, to accept the diverse viewpoints and respect each other regardless of their background, lifestyle, or identity. So I'm really happy to see that CSBA created this and we're adopting it, or we're reading it for adoption. And if we do in fact adopt this, I encourage the district to take steps to incorporate these ideals in curriculum where appropriate. So our district is producing tolerant and respectable citizens of the future. So happy this is there.
Great.
I did have one question about that civility board policy. If we do adopt that, what's our thought on trying to communicate that more broadly? And in particular, at the board meetings, members of the community can attend as well. So maybe some thoughts around, we don't have to solve it tonight, but some thoughts around how to make sure everyone is aware of the new policy.
Certainly we can make sure that we're sharing broader policy updates as part of our general communication, certainly, and incorporate it where possible. But I'm happy to share those updates with the community, especially in that one in particular.
Well, I guess I could ask my questions too. I was just wondering for the BP 3515.31, that's for school resource officers. That one we don't have a policy on right now, but do we still have the school resource officer program in partnership with Belmont? And what does this policy actually cover?
Yeah, so school, let me just double check something here. School resource, some districts actually pay school resource officers to be on campus with students. We do not have that practice, and as such, we don't have the policy for school resource officers. We work collaboratively with Belmont City Police and Redwood City Police to support our schools, but we don't have a uniformed officer that is on our campuses. And that the policy is really designed for those type of schools.
Okay, yeah, because I think mostly it's education oriented, as well as if we're having some sort of emergency drill, right? That they would be involved.
Yeah, so police agencies support us on those areas for emergency drills and whatnot. And I will say that we have strong relationships with both departments, and they'll actually be supporting us on our first day with extra traffic patrol, hint, hint, all on that. be safe by our schools every day, but especially as we get back in school. They help us with signage. They help us, they support us with our radios. We have a good relationship with them.
And then for the integrated waste management, it was good to see the incorporation of more on composting and that kind of stuff, which led me to think actually how many of our schools have the bins and are actually doing the composting.
I would defer to Ching Pei, Assistant Superintendent Hu. I haven't been able to see that this year.
I can't give you an exact count because it's been a while. When we were running normally, a lot of the schools have student leaders take on composting and sorting. And I also know it's a big topic of conversation at a couple of our schools in terms of which staff member oversees it. It is definitely part of the environmental science standards that are part of the NGSS. So I would say we are supportive of schools taking this on with student leaders to learn as they learn about environmental science and what they can do in their local community for the global good. Right now, off of 2 years ago, I want to say all but 1 or 2 sites had composting of it, bins available for students.
Okay. So it's not a huge lift, like people are pretty much raring to go already. So yeah. Okay.
There are people at every site, except for the 1 or 2 that I can think of. And I don't think it will be a huge lift as I think about kind of some shifts in staff too, that might want to take on this role with students.
Okay. Let's see. And then for the BP 5145.9, that was hate motivated behavior. I did see on there that it says to post prominently on the website. So I was like, oh, what's the expectation around that? Is that like the BRSSD website homepage or?
There's a list of, there's several policies that we typically highlight on our district web page, and we call out, that will be one of them.
Okay. And then just my last question was related to BP 6142.5, which is environmental education. And I know we cross that off as not including as a policy, but it sounds like it's related to environmental literacy. And I know the San Mateo County Office of Ed has a really strong program on environmental literacy. So just wanted to understand the thinking around that particular policy.
Assistant Superintendent, you reviewed that one, I believe? We did not have a current policy related to it. And we typically haven't had the practice of adopting new optional policies.
Yeah, that's the exact reason we didn't include it. It's not existing, something that we can.
And then it's an optional policy.
Right, and if that's something you guys want to change guidance on, we can certainly follow through.
Well, I'd just be interested in reading it just to see what it contains.
Well, I think Ms. Hopkins, we can get you the original, the policy that we took out.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we can get a copy of that.
That was it for my questions. Anybody else have any questions or feedback?
We were really cool. We'd have an uncivil policy because that would really juice things up.
or we'll see what's brewing with developer fees because, it's cool for further review. Okay. So the next on our agenda is the approval of variable term waiver.
Yes, Director Eastburn.
Okay, let me move it over so I can read it. Okay, it is requested that effective July 1st, 2021, Charles Donovan be eligible for an administrative services variable term waiver for the 2021-22 school year. Mr. Donovan has been employed with BRSSD for the last 2 years as the assistant principal at Ralston Middle School and recently was promoted to principal of Central Elementary. Mr. Donovan holds a bachelor's degree from Roger Williams University in Rhode Island and a master's from Notre Dame here in Belmont. He holds a single subject credential in social studies. He has also completed his 2-year administrative program through the County Office of Education. It's recommended that we consider Mr. Donovan as qualified for this administrative assignment effective July 1st.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve an administrative services credential variable term waiver for Charles Donovan for the 2021 to 2022 school year.
Second.
Ms. Hopkins, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, President Coop.
Aye.
Sorry, excuse me. Vice President Linebaugh.
Aye.
Trustee Howard.
Aye.
Trustee Posse.
Aye.
Trustee Bopali.
Aye.
I'm out of practice. And that was unanimous.
Thanks, Ms. Hopkins. I think we're all a little out of practice tonight. Okay, next agenda item is approval of provisional internship permit.
Okay. BRSSD is recommending the employment of Evangelina Pena Chavez as Learning Center teacher on the basis of the provisional internship permit, education specialist teaching credential for mild moderate disabilities. Ms. Chavez holds a bachelor's degree in liberal studies from Cal Poly Pomona and has worked as a Learning Center paraeducator at BRSSD since August of 2010. We recommend the approval of a PIP for Ms. Pena Chavez for the 21-22 school year.
I move that the Board of Trustees approves the provisional internship permit for Evangelina Pena Chavez as an education specialist teaching credential, mild moderate disabilities.
Second.
Ms. Hopkins, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, President Koo,
Aye.
Vice President Linebaugh,
Aye.
Trustee Howard.
Aye.
Trustee Posse,
Aye.
Trustee Bopali.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkins. And let's see, last agenda item for the meeting is future board meeting agenda items.
Great. Before we move to that item, I just want to extend my compliments to Director Eastburn and her team. This is a crazy time of year for her and for her team. She's working really hard to make sure that we have a fully hired staff. She's working through student placements, all kinds of really nuanced things. And I just want to give her and her team kudos. They've been doing quite a bit of work recently, and it shows. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
And it's with item 17 before you is our future agenda items. Our next meeting, August 30th, is one of our 2 board retreats for the year. We'll be talking about norms, goals, and objectives, doing a pandemic kind of retrospective, thinking about emergency planning and whatnot, as well as part of our strategic plan and future planning, followed by the 2 regular session meetings, September 9th and September 30th. Pretty normal things on those agendas. I will just kind of highlight, a focus on our district goals for that September 9th meeting. Enrollment updates we'll be bringing to the board, and then we're up for tech update and dashboard local indicators and finalizing goals at the September 30th meeting.
We talked about on the retreat, perhaps throwing in a section on parcel tax planning.
Yes.
And I think the other piece that we might revisit, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, is whether or not we need to revisit the equity statement now that the administrators and site leads have had a chance to sort of kick it around.
Yes, I think that's a nice interim kind of test, if you will. Administrators did have some feedback. We still want to test drive it in our community as we're going about, but I think definitely I can bring some feedback to the board, and I think it fits nicely in our strategic plan conversation.
Trustee Polly, I thought I saw your hand up earlier.
I did have my hand up, but Trustee Howard and I were on the same page. I was going to mention the parcel tax addition for the.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Anything else people want to bring up? I'm kind of wondering, do we need to have at some point another update on just how the school reopening went?
Sure. I'm always happy to provide those updates. I'm not sure what's going to be relevant at what time. I'm kind of wishful thinking that we're and quite honestly, not just wishful thinking, but confident that we're going to have a strong start. So, some of those typical updates, I'll definitely make sure that I'm including updates in my superintendent update, but we'll agendize a formal presentation as needed for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, one has to wonder if it's worthwhile to having case positivity rates reported out to the public, not necessarily even site to site, just within the district, and how it compares to other districts, because I'm sure that's a concern that people kind of want to know, roughly speaking, how we're doing, but not necessarily can we get into granular details.
Sure, I'm happy to share those updates, and all of our case rates will be on our website too.
On the BRSSD website, is that right?
Yes.
And where is that going to be located now?
So when you go to the 21-22 homepage, actually, let me see if I can get creative here. Pull it up here. It might adjust a little bit, but let me share my screen right there. You can all see my screen. So when we click the 21-22 school year, on the side, we have the pandemic framework, our COVID response plan. The plan, unless there's a better place that we haven't discovered, will be right here. We'll have our case rates. Folks will be able to click, and we'll take it to a new window to see those rates. And we plan to have that up next week at the end of the first week of school.
Any other feedback on the future agenda items? If not, typically we will meet, the vice president and president will meet with Superintendent DeGuara to discuss this meeting as well as future meeting agenda items. So feel free to reach out to us if something comes up. Okay, and with that, we will not need to convene to closed session. So I will adjourn the meeting at 8:50 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for a good first meeting of the year.
Have a wonderful night.
Good night.